Hi guys, welcome back to You Haven't Seen What? A podcast that is about a married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner, never seeing culturally relevant movies.
So, and yes, I'm Parry.
I'm Joelle.
And we are the married couple in question that is going back through our past and showing the other a film from the 80s that they have not yet seen. And so, Joelle, what did you have to show me this week?
So this week it is Flashdance. Welder by day, dancer by night. Alex Owens goes for her dreams and falls in love along the way in this awesome 1983 classic.
And I have to say, this was truly and deeply a culturally relevant movie that I had not seen this time. I don't know how I made it through the 80s or the rest of life without having seen Flashdance. It's pretty shocking even to me.
Yeah, I had no idea. We had to rectify that pretty quickly. And I don't know, Parry, what are your initial thoughts about Flashdance?
Well, I feel like I had actually seen Flashdance through all of the parodies and references over the years. At least seen the major parts, which are the dance sequences. No, actually, I have to say that there is more to it than just the most referenced items, which of course are the dance sequences, the clothing, the soundtrack. There's a lot of heart to the film, I will say, and it's a lot of fun.
Listen, let's just be real right now. Every girl wanted to be Jennifer Beals. Every guy wanted to date, or insert your own expletive there, Jennifer Beals.
Insert being the operative word, I think.
Yes. And Jennifer Beals, I mean, she's just amazing at 18 years old in this movie.
Yes.
She literally deferred going to Yale to be in this movie. She is just phenomenal. And then I think we see her in other roles along the way, and then she really resurrects again in the L Word. Good for her. But to start your career off with Flashdance and have it be such a monumental success in the box office as an 18-year-old person, that's got to be amazing.
It's pretty outstanding. And, you know, sometimes we see that where people explode onto the national stage very young and then disappear completely, and no one ever knows what happened to them. That's kind of what I thought had happened with her until the research revealed that she had gone to Yale. And so it made a lot of sense for her to disappear during that time, that she didn't try and balance the two or didn't give up going to Yale, for God's sakes, just to pursue her acting career. But it actually reminds me a little bit of another famous actor, Jodie Foster. She's another one who, though she did a lot of things very young, vanished for years. And it's because she actually was in college as well. She decided to go back to school. And people thought she was done. She was gone. But of course, we know that wasn't anywhere near the truth.
I have no idea how Jodie Foster just wound up in our conversations about Flashdance. But okay, I'm going to go with it.
I think it's because the idea often is, if you aren't, like the Billy Joel song says, you know, if I don't stay on the charts, then I'm gone next year.
Oh, no, but so many people have come back recently, especially. We thought they were done. They're not done.
Well, yeah, but often that's sort of like the nostalgia value of people will get recast because audiences remember them from the 80s or the 90s. They remember them from the past. Tarantino, for example, was big on bringing back actors that he loved from the 70s and 80s.
I don't even like the direction this is going. Flashdance. I don't even like the direction in which it's going. We're not talking about Tarantino. We're talking about the awesomeness about Flashdance.
Yes. Yes, and that someone that good can disappear and reappear.
She didn't disappear. She was in other films. She just did one a year. She didn't totally disappear. She just wasn't in blockbusters necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. So this was actually the first pairing, though, that we see of Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. This is their first collaboration that received pretty negative critical reviews. So 2 weeks before the film came out, the critics reviewed it, and they didn't really have anything nice to say. And that can sort of be evidenced by the score given on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's something like in the 30s. But then if you look at Google users, it's 86% of Google users like this movie. Because what is not to like about this movie? But I know you have way more to say about Simpson and Bruckheimer.
I was just going to say that Simpson and Bruckheimer really were a huge force in defining a lot of pop culture in the 80s. So many of their films really had a huge influence. Movies like Top Gun, the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, just so many that really defined the 80s. In fact, there's a story where while making Top Gun, one of the advisors on the film saw Jerry Bruckheimer looking out over a beach with a bunch of kids on it. And he said, "Oh, are you trying to get some ideas of what's popular in youth culture so you can work it into films?" And Bruckheimer said, "No, we define youth culture. I'm just, looking to see which they're picking up on." So really, they were very confident in their ability to mold the feel of the 80s. And like I said, Simpson and Bruckheimer were a huge part of that until Simpson's untimely death in 96. Of course, Bruckheimer has continued in his career producing things like the CSI series and countless other hit films.
Well, they must have been doing something right because it was the third highest grossing in 1983.
Yeah, I think it earned like 100 million worldwide in total.
No, it was closer to like 150, 150, wow. 200, something like that.
How much did the soundtrack earn?
I have a whole section about the soundtrack. Okay. I'm super excited about the soundtrack, but we're not there yet. So one interesting tidbit is that Flashdance is really based on the life story of these two exotic dancers.
Yeah, from Toronto, I think I read.
Yes, they're from Toronto. Their names were Maureen Martyr and Gina Healy, and they were paid $2,300 each to give up their rights to their story.
Wow.
Yeah, considering how much we just talked about it cursing. And they've tried to sue subsequently for additional monies, but have never been successful.
Were they welders?
So I think I don't know that they were welders per se.
I think Maureen, was actually a welder.
I think you're right. But I think the other one wasn't.
Okay.
But it was about like the makeup and the kabuki looking.
Oh, they did all that?
Yes. So like a lot of the dance sequences might be loosely based on what they saw in the clubs at that point in time and the performances.
Okay, wow. That's wild to me because I thought maybe they took you're a welder by day, dancer by night. That's pretty cool. We'll write a story around that and we'll make some cool MTV music video style sequences in here, and I'll get to talking about those. But the kabuki part, like that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. I didn't realize, because, these were like blue collar bars, at least as depicted in the film. How were they doing something so artsy and avant-garde?
I mean, number one is Canada. And number two, it's not necessarily like they did it to that level, but that they might have done it in a different take or a different takeaway. I mean, you just never really know, do you?
No, I would love to see these Canadian clubs where exotic dancers aren't just, swinging around a pole. They're actually putting on a whole like theater performance. We got to get to Canada.
We've been to Canada, just not Toronto yet.
Or to a strip club.
Too much personal information. Too much personal information happening right now.
Yeah, as you well know, I've only been to a strip club once in my life. It was someone's birthday party, and the guy not the one whose birthday it was, the guy who took me there.
This should not be a story that we're telling on a podcast. This should just not be a story that we're telling here.
Well, the guy wanted us to give money to his wife that was one of the dancers, and it was just not a cool scene at all.
See, grown-worthy story. I was trying to spare you all, but obviously that's not happening today. So back to Flashdance and the awesomeness that is Flashdance. Do you have any favorite scenes in the movie besides the kabuki one?
Well, I definitely do, but you know what? This was your showing, and so I really want to hear first about your favorite scenes.
Oh, there's so many. There are so many. Let's talk about Alex's opening dance sequence and the water. Let's just really talk about that one for a minute. I mean, how amazing and awe-inspiring and shocking was that scene? Never again did heavy metal videos ever look the same, or any video. It was always girls that were wet.
And that's the scene, of course, that's been imitated 100,000 times. And it's the only thing I really knew about the movie going in was that scene. I had heard kids talking about it in the hallways at school in 1983. And that's how I first heard about Flashdance. And of course, my parents were in no way whatsoever going to let me see Flashdance. And so that's how I missed it originally and then just never got back to it. But my big question about that scene, who cleans up all the water?
Really? That's your question about that scene?
It's got to be
where did the water
job.
come from, right? No, definitely not that in a little bar. Not where did the water come from in this little bar, but who cleans up the water? That's pretty obvious. The people who get paid to clean up the water.
Well, like I said, this bar definitely, for being a blue-collar towny bar, they definitely were very open to some very interpretive exotic dance. And so if they were open to that, then, maybe one of the audience members was a volunteer and he was up there with a bucket and dumped it on her at the right time.
Listen, don't tarnish Mobby's name, okay? Just don't do it. Nothing can come close to Mobby's. Nothing.
Has anyone ever opened a real Mobby's?
I don't know. Have you ever opened up one?
Yeah, if there's one out there, if anyone knows of a real life Mobby's, not just the name Mobby, but one that is, like I said, this sort of gritty little town bar, but does something so interesting and interpretive like that, then please let us know.
Sure, let us know. We'll make it there next time we're in that area.
Oh, but what about the other club in the film?
Zanzibar!
Yes, Zanzibar. Whether or not it was already named that, or if it's was the Billy Joel song out at that point?
Billy Joel song was out for 5 years at that point.
Yep.
Because I looked it up.
Yes, the song that my wife cannot get out of her head. If I just happen to go
the bar.
Yeah, there we go. And it'll be stuck there all day.
All day.
But the problem is that backlash is on me because then she starts playing it on the iPod in the car and on the records at home.
Okay. I'm going to give you this. Folks, if you have not heard Billy Joel's Zanzibar, you should hear it. Preferably a live version. It's amazing. I'm stuck. I'm addicted. I saw this. I totally forgot that was the name of the club. And I saw the club name and I pretty much died when I saw it again while rewatching Flashdance. So Zanzibar holds a place in my heart.
And it is a great song, although I've always wanted to hear a metal version of it.
No. Why do you always... No. Leave well enough alone.
Okay.
It's okay. So, wait a minute. I told you my favorite scenes. Just one scene. I mean, obviously, when she's working out to Maniac and it's the body double. The ending audition scene is phenomenal. I mean, the whole movie is pretty darn awesome. The lobster scene, is that your favorite scene?
I would never admit to that.
Never admit. So what is your favorite scene then that you'll admit to?
I think my favorite scene, to me, Jennifer Beals is very natural and believable throughout the film. But there's one scene in the whole thing that to me really feels like a real life sequence, and that is the argument they have at the sandwich truck. And there's just something about their back and forth on that argument.
Are you talking about Michael Nuri?
Yes. When she and Michael Nuri... if only I could have that supernatural curl to my hair that he has.
You do.
Not really. It's more of a wave. But they're having that argument, and the lady who runs the lunch truck is watching, and all the welders are watching. And I don't know, there's just something about their bickering in that scene that, I don't know, I just thought that really brought out the best in both of those actors. But I will say that their chemistry throughout is very believable, especially since last week we had a lot to say about the chemistry in Blade Runner and how it just didn't work for us.
Yeah, everything about this chemistry was amazing. Literally, it makes you want to do things after, because that's just the level of amazingness and just heat and passion that I think Jennifer Beals really brings to that role, number one, and that Michael Nuri really is able to play off of and keep going with a very animal instinct while trying to be logical in a sort of older guy way.
Well, that's the other thing, is he's like 35 and she's 18.
Yeah. 36, maybe? 35? Something like that.
Yeah, and though they address the dating the boss as problematic, that doesn't seem to stop them for very long. He very much pursues her.
He stalked her. He followed her home.
Yeah. He follows her a couple of times.
She's very followable. I would follow her. She's very followable in this movie. So we've got to talk about a couple of things, but I think the next thing really we have to address, because it's a character unto itself in this movie, is the soundtrack. That is so freaking amazing. If you've never heard this soundtrack, what rock have you been living under? I think you need to go out and get it right now. I think that if you haven't listened to it, it's a complete travesty in your life. You're missing out. This is the time when the entire record, cassette, whatever you want to call it, was amazing. The entire thing. And that doesn't necessarily happen anymore with the age of digital downloads. But this entire soundtrack is 110% amazing.
I would agree. I had never listened to the full soundtrack. But when you put all the pieces together, it's a great driving soundtrack. It's a good road trip soundtrack. It's one you'd want to drive with the windows down and the music cranked up.
Yeah, so it's amazing. So just to give you some backstory behind the soundtrack, it was produced by Phil Ramone, the late Phil Ramone. And also on there that had a super big hand was Giorgio Moroder. So he has notches in his belt like Top Gun, Scarface, Midnight Express. It sold 700,000 copies in the first 2 weeks and knocked Thriller off the Billboard list, FYI. It has sold 6 million in the United States so far. It also led to a Grammy for Best Original Song, a Grammy for Best Album or Original Score written for a motion picture or a television special. Maniac was also nominated for Best Original Song, and it contained the songs What a Feeling by Irene Cara, He's a Dream by Shandy, The Love Theme by Helen St. John, Manhunt by Karen Carmen, Lady, Lady, Lady by Joe Esposito, Imagination by Laura Branigan, Romeo by Donna Summer, Seduce Me Tonight, which was Cycle V at the time, or Cycle 5, I'll Be Here Where the Heart Is by Kim Carnes, and Maniac by Michael Sembello. So just an overwhelming amount of awesomeness on this album.
Yes, it is an amazing collection. And honestly, there are some songs on the soundtrack I had never heard.
What?
I know. There are a few that were not familiar to me, but they were great, and especially how they're presented in the film, many of them as sort of mini music videos with the dance sequences. So the pairing was fantastic.
Yeah, and most of the videos for the actual songs ended up being pretty much a mini sequence of the movie. So Maniac was like that. Flashdance, What a Feeling was like that. A couple of different songs. But which one was your favorite?
I have always loved soundtrack themes, and so I really loved the Helen St. John love theme. It almost sounds like a music box, and often in a music box you find a ballerina, and that's what she wants to be. That connection to the theme of her dream really works for me. Although, if we're talking about tracks that connect back to one of the music videos, Imagination, where she does the whole kabuki performance, that song and that visual together are very powerful.
I love all of it. It's really hard for me to pick, quite honestly. But if I have to pick one, I am going with Maniac. I think the pacing of it really just describes the pacing of the entire movie. I feel like that energy, that dance energy, is really transferred through it. What I didn't know is that it was really inspired by a movie called Maniac that was about a serial killer in New York. And the lyrics were changed, obviously, for Flashdance. But the originals were He's a maniac, that's for sure. He will kill your cat and nail him to the door.
Yeah, I can see why they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't imagine why they needed to change that, but they did change it, and that caused Michael Sembello some grief and not some grief at the same time. So it caused him a little bit of grief because he was disqualified for Best Original Song because it wasn't explicitly made for Flashdance. So Flashdance, What a Feeling, was able to go ahead and capture that.
Yeah, but he was crying all the way to the bank with as much as he made off of this soundtrack, I'm sure.
I hope so. I would hope so. I hope he didn't sell it for $2,300 and call that a day. But the soundtrack's amazing. I really can't say enough about it. You should listen to it. You should listen to it on repeat. You should buy it because Spotify doesn't have all the songs on it. I checked. You should definitely buy a copy of this album.
On vinyl, for sure.
Vinyl, whatever. Do you have a record player? We have a record player. We have vinyl too. Do we have this on vinyl? I don't think so.
We'll have to check.
Okay. I don't have it on CD though, because it's amazing. And I own the cassette. I wore that cassette out for sure.
Hey, cassettes are making a comeback. Maybe it'll be available.
I don't want it on cassette. I guess more to the overarching like themes of the movie, it really is a movie about getting up, trying again, failing, getting up, trying again, failing, and sort of what happens along the way. And it's about this group of young folks that are really trying to go ahead and pursue their dreams, right? So Jeannie wants to be an ice skater, and she goes out, she tries out, she falls up, she gets back once, she goes out again, she falls again, and then she can't get back up. So much so that she then goes to Zanzibar and starts doing full nudity dancing when she was a waitress at Mobby's. So dancing wasn't even something that she would do. And then you have Richie, right? Her boyfriend, cook / dishwasher. He decides that, hey, I've seen, my girlfriend now fail, and I'm going to go to LA and pack up and try to...
Yeah, I'm going to ditch her without telling her I'm going.
Yes, I'm going to ditch her without telling her that I'm going, but I'm going to go ahead and try to pursue my dreams because I'm no good to her if I'm not pursuing my dreams either. Like, two people in a relationship not pursuing their dreams is not going to work either.
They obviously don't have good communication in this relationship, though, because...
Was it a relationship? We assume that it's a relationship?
We never see them be affectionate to each other in any way, so I'm not sure what their relationship was all about.
I mean, she does his laundry, for sure.
Well, if that's all it took to qualify as a good relationship, then the world might be a different place, but... So is that all it really takes? Should I just be having you do my laundry and that's how we could have a stronger relationship? We don't really need to talk to each other?
No.
No.
You do my laundry. Let's get that straight. Because you won't let me touch the laundry.
Well, you were mixing lights and darks.
I was not mixing lights and darks, folks. Let's just be clear about this. I come from a third world country. We believe in having a full load going into the washer, not separating socks from jeans.
Look, Gentles. Gentles is its own category.
I'm not even talking to you about this anymore. And we're done. End scene on the laundry conversation. So then you have Alex, of course, right? Jennifer Beals, our main character. She goes to the conservatory to go ahead and get this information. She's freaked out. She has anxiety by all these ballerinas and dancers that she's seen there, who have obviously been to a bajillion classes, multiple schools, have been doing this all their lives. And here she is. She's self-taught, and she wants to still be a part of this amazing conservatory.
And it looks like they shot it in a museum, so they make it very like European looking and very classy. And of course, they contrast that with her in her military jacket and her work boots to the point where she feels very self-conscious being in front of all of these trained dancers and the administrators. And
so she leaves. She doesn't get the application. She leaves. And then she goes back again and she gets the application. She gets a call back for an audition. But she realizes, right, that Michael Nouri has set this up for her.
Well, because he makes a classic male slip where he's trying to say something, bragging about something great that he did, and he gives too much away. He's like, oh, yeah, I called last night and made a reservation at the restaurant. And she immediately...
Last night?
Yeah, she picks up on it immediately because he's being an idiot.
Well, he was being thoughtful and an idiot at the same time. So he uses his pull to go ahead and get her this audition. And she decides, well, I've not earned it on my own, so I'm not going to go ahead and do it. Part of it really hones back to this whole conversation that was had. If you give up your dream, you die. Coincidentally, she goes to see her mentor and her mentor, Hannah, and Hannah has died the previous day, pretty much the same day that she said that she wasn't going to go ahead and do this audition. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, now you have to do it. You have to do it for Hannah. You have to follow your dreams. You have to at least try.
Do we ever know who Hannah was to her? Was she just an older person she befriended? Or do we know what their connection was? I know she encouraged her a lot and that she had been a ballerina herself professionally. But
I don't think we ever know the connection.
And it doesn't seem like she's teaching her anything about ballet. She just talks a lot about how great it is to be in the theater and on the stage. But I don't know what she's actually taught her.
It doesn't matter what she's taught her. Girl's wrecked when she dies. And she really goes ahead and she perseveres and she goes to the audition. She messes up in the very beginning and she starts over again, right? So this whole concept of try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try until you succeed really is throughout. So while everybody thinks this is like a TNA movie, it's actually not. It's a very interesting way of tying in going after your dreams and some TNA, thereby appealing to a widespread audience. Thank you, Simpson and Bruckheimer.
Yeah, and the woman who tells her, well, she died, is pretty blunt. There's no, I'm sorry for your loss, or, how were you all connected or anything? She's like, she died.
No, but let's be real. She is an 18-year-old welder, self-trained dancer.
Who has no parents?
I don't know where the parents are in this situation.
At first, I thought her friend's parents were her parents because she's over there eating at the house.
Oh, right. She's living in this warehouse that she's obviously furnished by garnering things in secondhand stores or off the street.
Which is an amazing freaking space, but it also tells you that no one really wanted to live in Pittsburgh at the time, that you could get that kind of open space for obviously whatever small amount she's paying for it.
Yeah, she's just a badass. There's just nothing else more to say about that. She's a total badass.
And the fact that she's a welder, which, pretty unusual occupation in, say, the early 80s for a woman. I thought that was a really cool... no wonder they wanted to make a story that somehow involved that, because it's really neat. And also how they balanced not only her being a welder and being able to hold her own in that arena, but also being this extremely nimble and flexible dancer. So
let's talk about dancing, shall we? Let's talk about dancing.
Yes, so we'll talk about the Full Monty and their reference to the fact that the welding looks like crap.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe we should talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because then this really ties into maybe my version of what's super ugly about this film,
the
sadly.
Fact that dance...
Stop, yes.
It's probably the most rewound... People wore out VHSs watching her work out, I'm sure.
I'm sure. So, yeah, let's talk about the good and the bad and the ugly, and I think that will cover our whole dancing sequence. So the good, what do you think was really great about this movie?
We've already really talked about my good. I thought that the dance sequences that were... in the club were my favorite parts, because they were really summing up that era in the 80s. MTV was a new thing, that rapid cut, cool angles, crazy costumes, interesting lighting, all of that was being defined at that time. The sequences where they're doing their dances are like little music videos, little mini movies unto themselves, and they're really cool and well done. And I don't know if the director, Adrian Lyne, got the inspiration from MTV. I know he didn't want to do the movie even to begin with. He thought it sounded like a dumb plot, is what he said. And they asked him like 5 times to do it. I'm not sure where the inspiration came from, but it's really of its era in terms of those little segments. And they're just fun to watch. Even if the imagination one looks like an epileptic's nightmare with the strobe lighting.
So my good from the movie is really that Jennifer Beals just kicks ass. She kicks ass all over the place. I love her performance. She's so young and she delivers such a really great, heartfelt performance. And there's actually a message. So I totally dig it. And the soundtrack, let's just be real, the soundtrack's amazing. It's amazing. And I'll even go on record as saying that this week I listened to the soundtrack again. I haven't listened to it in a little bit. I generally tend to listen to it every couple of years, but I hadn't listened to it, and now I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the soundtrack. I was in traffic earlier this week. I was basically losing my mind dancing to the soundtrack in the car, in traffic.
Entertaining other drivers.
Entertaining a whole host of other drivers. Singing on top of my lungs. I was singing before the podcast. I am just re-obsessed with the soundtrack, if you can't tell already. Then there's the bad. What did you really not like?
You know, when we were thanking Simpson and Bruckheimer, I have to say that we sadly probably have to thank them for a resurgence in Polak jokes around that time, because Richie's propensity for telling them, which at first he's played as an idiot, and therefore the jokes kind of seem like, okay, only a moron's going to tell Polak jokes. And so at first it looks like they're saying something negative about telling this type of joke. But then later on, when he's performing for the club, all he has to do is tell some jokes about the Steelers, and suddenly they're open to listening to the Polak jokes, and they love them and are laughing at them. And so it makes it seem like it's okay. And I thought that was very problematic, that those seem to be such a source of humor.
Okay, and this might be why I love you, because that was my exact bad that we did not talk about ahead of time. I was like, really? Polak jokes? Why do we have to go there?
Because I remember in the early 80s, around this time, hearing dozens and dozens of that type of joke. Probably some of the same ones from the film people were repeating, but lots of similar ones. And I'm sure they had been around already, but I think it probably popularized it again.
So I don't even want to talk about it anymore and give it any more fuel or levity or anything.
Do not repeat the jokes from this film. They are not okay.
No, they're not okay. Not okay. And then there's the ugly, the nitty gritty ugly. And I'm going to go first.
Yeah, I think we might even share this ugly.
I think we share this ugly because
this is real ugly.
When we both found it out, I think we sort of looked at each other and we sort of, and Parry's already mentioned it really. The fact that Maureen Johan, J-A-H-A-N,
yes,
the body double for the bulk of the dancing in this film, never got credit in the credits.
That is absolutely freaking crazy.
That they haven't even updated the credits, nothing, that basically she's this unknown, amazing star in the film because you essentially are lusting after her too through a lot of it, through all the dance.
Now, wasn't it was 2 dancers in the end sequence,
3.
Right?
So it was Maureen, it was Crazy Legs, who was a break dancer. It's a guy, actually. So whenever you see that last breakdancing move, it's actually a guy doing it. But he is credited with his crew because you see his crew in the breakdancing scene earlier in the sequence. So you actually do see him. But then there's also the gymnast who does the one large leap at the end. But the person who's doing the bulk of the dancing in the earlier scene in the workout and the bulk of the dancing in the end scene, and you can tell they're different people. I mean, this is the 80s. It wasn't so great at hiding the fact that you were doing different people. But yeah, the body double, Maureen Johan, was never credited. And they said that she wasn't credited because they didn't have enough room in the credits. They had to make it short.
That's absolutely just wrong on so many levels.
It's so bad. It's so bad. So we feel for you, Maureen. We think that you're amazing. Thank you for making our watching experience so much more awesome. Oh, right. She did all of Alex's dancing sequences. So the one in the front with the water, the kabuki one, all of those.
Yep. So all those scenes that help teenage boys come into puberty were not only Jennifer Beals.
Yes. Even though that's who you're lusting after. And it wasn't really well known that it was a body double at the time. Everybody really wanted to make it seem like it was all Jennifer Beals. And quite honestly, until I really looked at it lately, I would not have known. And I was probably not watching it on a TV the same size that back then that there is now. So,
but a film screen would have been huge. And
but they're dimly lit. Like all the scenes where the body doubles in, they're dimly lit, or there's makeup involved, or there's a whole host of things.
Once you're really looking for it, though, the body double is pretty apparent.
The male body double is really apparent when you look for it.
Even the face, like in the Imagination Kabuki sequence, even though there's face paint, it's like, that's not Jennifer Beals.
That's not Jennifer Beals. Not to discredit Jennifer Beals from any part of it. I just think she just wasn't a professional dancer, and so you needed help.
Yeah, she turned down going on Dancing with the Stars recently.
Yeah. She said that she's just not, she doesn't dance that way.
Yeah.
That's fine. But not to take away from any significance of what she did, just the fact that Maureen really needs recognition.
Well, and their excuse for why she wasn't in the credits was bullshit. They just said they needed to shorten the credits. What do you mean shorten the credits? Credits, they put in like every person who did a stunt.
They had the dog. They had the dog.
Yeah, they credited the dog and not the body double. And I think it's probably because they did want you to believe that it was Jennifer Beals. That it's better for the filmmakers that if you believe that, but it's utterly ridiculous.
Utterly ridiculous. So yeah, that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Did you have a different ugly, or was your ugly the same as my ugly?
My ugly was exactly the same. I think that's the ugliest ugly, when people aren't credited. Sometimes people ask not to be credited for whatever reason. This was a case where she didn't find out until she watched the credits that she had not been included. And that's really crappy.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Although, I think she got married to Kevin Bacon's double in Footloose.
Which is awesome.
So I think they got married, and hopefully they're taking it all the way to the bank, maybe.
So did you know there's an Alex Owens Barbie doll?
Yes, I did know that. I'm aware.
That's a little crazy to me, and it wasn't until like 2010 that they came out with this.
Yeah, and it's a revolution. Like the 80s are just really coming back with a vengeance as our generation sort of takes over and really has the disposable income.
Well, yeah, that explains a lot of eBay.
A lot of eBay. I literally wear a gray sweatshirt that's off the shoulder that has 80s icons on it. So like, checkerboarded stripes and stuff on it.
And speaking of that look, there are a couple of stories about that off-the-shoulder look that Jennifer Beals has said that, she had once washed a sweatshirt and it came out of the dryer too small. And so she cut the neck out of it and she wore it to the audition, and they liked it. And so they included it in the film. The costume designer has said it was their idea. Either way, though, of course, it became hugely iconic in the 80s. That and leg warmers, all from this film.
Of course.
And I can just imagine thousands of teens imitating the scene where she's sitting tragically on the floor when she's upset toward the end. She's got the ripped up jeans and she's got the shirt off her shoulder, and it's perfectly posed tragedy. And I can just see teens doing that scene, and parents trying to talk to them. They're like, I'm doing my Flashdance depression right now, leave me alone, Mom, you just don't understand.
Listen, I didn't have the leg warmers, but I definitely had a pink shirt that said Flashdance on it.
Yes.
If I can find the photo, maybe I'll post it.
To heck with the photo, judgment. We need that shirt.
No. The shirt's long gone. The shirt has been long gone for so long.
Again, eBay.
No, that shirt is long gone for sure. But I have a picture somewhere, I think. And my friends were definitely wearing neon and leg warmers, I think, in that picture. I don't know. Let's see if I can dig it up.
So, great piece of trivia. You told me this. Who auditioned for the role of Nick?
Kevin Costner?
Yes.
Yeah, Kevin Costner.
And I don't know if I picture that. I don't know. He's just such a subdued performer. I'm not sure if I can picture him with the same chemistry with Beals.
I will say this too. Kevin Costner does bad love scenes.
oh, man.
I'm sorry. Listen, there is something about...
So you're going to have Harrison Ford and Kevin Costner sending lawyers to our house.
Why are you putting me on like blast? I didn't say that they were bad. I just said that it looked like a bad love scene. It did not grasp me in a particular way.
Which Kevin Costner love scene are you thinking of?
I don't care. Just pick one.
Okay.
they're not good. Sorry, Kevin Costner fans. I really like his acting. I just don't necessarily, and I want to believe it. I think that's what's so difficult. Like, I want to buy that this super manly man is going to throw you down and have his way with you, that you are okay with, of course.
Remember, he believes in long, wet kisses that last for days at Bull Durham. You've seen Bull Durham, right? Have you seen Bull Durham?
I don't know if I remember.
Oh, man. That's got to be on the list.
Okay. It's baseball. Yeah, on the list. But it's just one of those things where I don't know if I always buy it. So Michael Nuri, God bless that man. In this sequence, I buy it. There is something about that older gentleman who just gets a little wonky about this girl who throws him off balance, and just takes him by surprise. And it's just an adventure.
Well, and she enjoys being in the power position in many ways. He may be the boss, but she's in charge.
Yes and no.
Well, and
yes and no.
I think yes. I think that's what makes it a good chemistry between them, is you can see that they each like to be dominant and submissive at different times. He'll take charge sometimes, she will sometimes, vice versa, as in many good relationships, unless it's your thing to always be one or the other, not to be dismissive of any type of relationship, but they seem to have a good balance of it. There's the scene, of course, that changed seafood for audiences forever, where I have never seen anyone eat a lobster that seductively, any food that seductively, ever, anywhere.
You're almost turning red right now.
Yeah, it's quite a scene. When we were watching the scene together, it was one of those moments that I thought, first of all, I'm glad my parents didn't take me to see this in the 80s, because there were a couple we went to go see where all of us were sort of, leaning away from each other as certain scenes were occurring. The whole Marlene Dietrich wearing a tuxedo, and then when she takes that off and she's not wearing anything but the front of the tuxedo and the cufflinks, and eating the seafood. And apparently when they were filming it, she didn't know exactly what to do. And Nick said, what would shock people? And so that's when she started playing footsie.
You wonder if they were a thing. Like, were they a thing?
Because their chemistry is that good.
Because their chemistry is that good. Like, you really believe it. You believe that continued either before or after, because you buy it, and you buy it so well, and it seems so natural. So it's hot. It's just hot. It's hot and awesome.
So I do have to mention, as a great piece of trivia that connects back to you, of course, the owner of Zanzibar is who?
Zanzibar.
Yes, of course.
Tonight, it's where I'll be.
I'll put the vinyl on after we finish recording.
I'll be. It is Leaving, who is also Mr. Body from Clue, the movie. Which
we will not be reviewing because Joelle has seen Clue more than any other living human.
A bajillion times.
Yes. Joelle told Tim Curry that it was the only movie she could fall asleep to. And he kind of looked at her with a look of offense.
Can we back up? First of all, if you ever have the opportunity to ever meet Tim Curry, thank goodness he's still alive. If you ever have that opportunity, it is such a momentous moment that you're lucky I could even get words out. Let's be real. And I couldn't even get words out. I was freaked out. I had massive anxiety.
And he was very polite and gracious. But when you said, it's the only movie I could fall asleep to, you then backtracked and explained, I had insomnia as a kid, and I would put the movie on, and I knew it so well by heart, and it was so comforting that it helped me to fall asleep. And then he understood. But at first, he looked very confused by why you would be giving him that information, because it didn't sound like a compliment.
It didn't sound like a compliment. It was a compliment, Tim Curry. I hope you're listening. Probably not to the Flashdance podcast. But either way, Leaving is in there, and he isn't really in too many movies.
But he is also was and is the lead singer of like a metal band called Fear.
Yes.
And famously trashed a dressing room when they were performing on Saturday Night Live on a Halloween special.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Did you know who was supposed to play the part of that club owner but turned it down because they thought it did not go with his bad boy image of the demon?
Wasn't that a bad boy image?
No. They thought it was still too... It would hurt the image a little bit.
Oh, okay. Who?
Of the demon. A.K.A. Gene Simmons.
I was going to say Gene Simmons?
Yes.
Oh, damn. That would have been
Can you
awesome.
imagine Gene Simmons? Meow.
Actually, I think that would have been amazing.
I don't know why I find Gene Simmons hot in my head. That's a whole nother podcast.
Parry.
I don't know. It's the duality. It's always the duality of a person that I find to be interesting.
It's because you saw Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, and your world
No, I
was
definitely
never the
didn't see
same.
that. I haven't seen so much of things that have to do with Kiss, but I don't know how we got back here. I'm gonna bring it back to Jennifer Beals. It was so amazing. Huge fan of her in the L Word. She's amazing. Sorry. Go ahead.
To make sure that Jennifer Beals knows that
I love her to death, that she's amazing. And right out of the gate, she gave us this freaking whopper of an awesome movie that pretty much has shaped any woman in their 40s, 50s, 60s, dare I say. And the fact that it's okay to say no to your boss. And the fact that it's okay to change your mind and say yes again, or to throw a rock at a window, Don't do that. That is an offense. But yeah.
And a couple things thematically that I want to mention is I thought that it was very interesting that they have her as a welder in Pittsburgh. And this is at a time when industry is starting to leave America. The Industrial Revolution was really ending. A lot of jobs were going to other countries. Soon after, we had movies coming out like Gung Ho, where it's the car industry starting to decline. And I found that was an interesting backdrop for the film because at that time, the American dream was becoming more and more elusive. And so it really, I think, was poignant for audiences at the time that here she is pursuing her dream and she's having to work so hard, working these two jobs to try to get to that point and having such a hard time achieving that dream. And she doesn't want to rely on someone else. That's why she gets so upset whenever someone else does some of the work for her when he makes that phone call, because she wants to be able to achieve this and attain that dream on her own merits. And that was, like I said, becoming a harder thing to do at the time, which is why I think that the scene where they are, first of all, walking down the train tracks in heels, which is ridiculous, and my father, who worked for the railroad, would have lost his damn mind seeing that scene of them walking down the middle of the tracks.
And he just ruined a good pair of heels.
Exactly. And then they run into this abandoned building. And, of course, we quickly forget about all this because she slides his hand into her shirt, and that's what we're suddenly paying attention to. But
as well we should.
So they're in this abandoned building, teasing each other and running around, and it's like they're playing in American Blight. Pittsburgh is a wreck at this point. So much is gone from it. And the fact that they can have this love against that backdrop, I think is at the simultaneously hopeful and depressing. But I think the hope is what comes through finally in the final analysis of it.
That's really deep, honey.
Thank you.
I don't know where to go from there.
Well,
but I'm sure you have more thoughts.
One scene I did find interesting was the workout sequence, and not because it's women in 80s jazzercise outfits, but because its resemblance to Olivia Newton-John's Physical video that came out in 1981. And I thought that, with the white backdrops and the look of it and the way it was edited, it felt very much like that video. It's a fun sequence, and it helps to establish the connection between the different exotic dancers together, including the one
They're not exotic dancers. Those are cabaret dancers.
Oh, sorry.
There is a difference.
Sorry. And there's the one who looks like
They don't take their clothes off.
True, even if one does look like a Nagel painting. But it does contain one of the funniest lines in the film, where the only black character says, "Makes me glad I'm not a honky." What I was going to say is
But
why...
we were asking relationship advice.
Right.
Right. And she was differentiating what she perceives as white people having a relationship versus...
Yes. What I was just going to say was problematic was that unfortunately a lot of movies of the time, the black characters are only comic relief, and her line is the funniest in the movie, but it's that something audiences are familiar and comfortable with is that black character getting to have a couple of funny lines, but not really having much more to do or interesting to say in the larger scope of the film.
Not in that film.
No. And not many of the time, unfortunately.
Agreed. But that's also the time and who was able to have the disposable income to go to movie theaters and who was going to be the driving force behind buying the soundtracks. And so that right there kind of sums up who's seeing that movie.
There's actually a great film from the 80s that addresses this very thing. It's a Hollywood Shuffle from 87. It's Robert Townsend. And he actually makes a whole commentary on acting in Hollywood as a black actor, and that he's only being offered roles as like coke dealers and pimps, and he doesn't want to accept any of those roles. So it's commenting on the roles that white audiences were comfortable seeing black actors play in Hollywood films in the 80s. Well worth the watch.
Right. Again, I go back to who had the disposable income, who was going to the theater, and really that was the target market for that time.
Two things in this that really stood out to me as being questionable. One is the fact that the guy at the bar at the beginning, who's hanging out with her boss, knows her social security number.
He probably does payroll. And back then it was hand. So,
but he's memorized an employee's social security number. That seems troublesome. And also the fact that the line that at the time may have seemed more innocent, but where she says to the priest, "I've been thinking about sex a lot, and that's a hard thing to not do." Well, I guess it's not hard for you to not think about sex. And that line has just taken on a much darker tone after the last couple of decades of scandal throughout the church.
Oh, that's such inference. Such reaching.
I went to Catholic school. I'm allowed.
Yes, you are allowed.
I went to enough confessionals to know.
But yeah, no, that's such a, she's 18 years old. She probably does come from a religious background. That's part of her ritual is to go to church and talk about things. And so that's what she's doing in that scene.
Oh, of course. I'm just saying that the meaning of it may have shifted over the years.
You're so dark. So dark.
So why was this film important to you as a kid, and why was it important for you to show it to me?
I don't know if it's so much as that it was important to me as a kid. I remember loving the film. I remember running around dancing to the film. And truthfully, I probably took jazz because of this film. So that part was amazing. I always had this deep connection to music, and the soundtrack is just truly amazing. And it's so culturally relevant. It is one of the films that is so well known. And the fact that the critics hated it, an audience loved it, just reminds me of that even more. Is that it was poignant, it did something different at the time, and it really allowed kids, weirdly enough, to access this idea of heat and passion and drama and going after your dreams in a very lighthearted way without making it seem so awful or so impossible in a way.
So you're saying it led to a spike in teenage pregnancies?
No. That's a bad joke. That's a bad joke. Sorry. What I'm saying is that it was lighthearted and fun. And after Blade Runner last week, we needed lighthearted and fun. And we needed something that still had a message, but just wasn't so serious.
And I have to say I enjoyed it for those exact reasons. And it is so quintessentially 80s that, again, I'm not even sure I experienced the real 80s not having seen Flashdance.
You didn't.
In fact, I don't know which is the first film to do this, but it may be one of the earliest examples of that big scene at the end where everyone gets so into what the main character is doing, that because there's no way the judges at the ballet school are going to be like dancing along with her. And she's not even doing ballet. Like if she was auditioning for the school in Fame, that dance at the end would make much more sense. It doesn't really even fit with what she's auditioning for, but it's so fun. It doesn't really matter. And I feel like so many films that have come after have done that same thing. And it's still so enjoyable in a guilty way that I like I said, it's so perfectly 80s.
It is one of those movies that you will not be sad that you watched. It is like 96 minutes. Take the hour and a half out of your life if you've had a bad week, and then you'll want to buy the soundtrack. It just goes hand in hand. Speaking of all those things, our shameless self promo plug. Check out our website, youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com, and our social media, our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can, all those usernames are You Haven't Seen What Movie. So check us out. Come back next week. Hang out with us. So remember,
Be kind.
rewind. See you guys next week.